goodness. Welcome to episode 11, I believe, of the Positive Echo podcast. How you doing, Gary?
I'm okay. Yeah, it's been, as I said to you earlier, it's been one of those days, those little niggles, like you pour yourself a non-alcoholic beer to just keep the tubes going because your daughter's given you a cold, and within 30 seconds a fruit fly drops in it.
Do you know what? I think the Portuguese, I'm in Portugal, I think the Portuguese probably have a saying about that. The sort of day when a fly lands in your beer. It probably wouldn't be a non-alcoholic beer here in Portugal, to be fair, but we get the gist. It's the hallmark of your day is a fly landing in your beer. So it can only go up from here with Karl Dunn, who's joining us.
We have to leave on a positive note.
Yes, absolutely. How did you meet Karl Dunn? This could get confusing, couldn't it? We've got Karl Munson, Karl Dunn, and Gary Coulton. How did you meet Karl Dunn?
Never met him in the flesh. We met via Substack. I can't remember which way around it was. He's got this very popular Substack called Undividing, hence the title of today's episode. And the fact that I'd never heard it before, Undividing, you won't find it in a dictionary. That intrigued me, and I started reading his stuff. And then I'm the kind of person that will go straight to you. I won't mess about through comments or anything like that, although I might. But I went straight to him, said, I'm really interested in what you do. We should have a chat. So we did.
Here we are.
Here we are. And the thing I like about Karl with a K is his only reason for doing his Substack is bringing people and organizations and the world maybe closer together by a process he calls undividing. And that's really intriguing. I think
we need some of that, don't we, at the moment?
Yeah, this guy wants to change the world.
Fantastic. Well, let's bring him on. Let's starting right here. In terms of my understanding of this, and it sounds like another idea, like Trees for Kids, which I've written about in the Portugal Resident this week. You introduced me to Vicas, of course. I think this is going to be another idea which is going to be bringing into Portugal from its originator, who joins us live now. Big round of applause, Karl Dunn, everybody. Woohoo!
G'day. How are you?
Oh. Good to have you, Karl.
Nice to be here. Thanks so much for having me on the Positive Echo podcast. Appreciate it. Yes, and you're absolutely right, Gary. You went straight to my DMs. You did not muck about. You were like, right, and up you popped. Yes.
I'm the kind of guy that when I was a scientist and at conferences, I don't care how big the audience is. After somebody's given a talk, and there might be a student, there might be the leader in the world in the subject. If I've got a question, I go and ask them straight away after the talk. I don't worry about those supposed niceties. And you had that instant effect on me. So
great.
I'm getting to know you, and I'm really happy that.
Same here, mate. Same here. Yeah. I mean, Substack is wonderful for that. I think one of the great things about that as a social media platform is that because it's for readers, long form writers and readers of people who like long form content, there's a consideration with the people that you like and you track and you follow, and a lot of it is how they think and perceive the world. So it's a great place to meet like-minded souls, I find, as opposed to a lot of the other places where we're partnering up or friending over an aesthetic, which is weak at best, maybe. Passing, perhaps. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, so I guess we have to get on to the meat of the meeting, which is focusing on you and undividing, and maybe give us the short CV. Where you're from, and I guess how did you get to this undividing thing?
Well, all right, I'll make it as quick as possible. I'm Australian.
You don't have to make it quick.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, okay. Not a problem at all.
All right, I will. Well, I'll give you the chatty version, the scenic route. So my parents are Australians, but I was born in Canada, and I grew up there until I was 9, and then we moved back to Australia, and I stayed in Australia basically most of my, all of my life until I was 25. So, those very formative years, I think of myself as being an Australian. Certainly, my sense of humor and how I think of my identity. But I left Australia at 25 and I never moved back. Well, I tried a couple of times, two very sort of failed, aborted attempts. But I lived all over the world. I was working in advertising, and it took me, this is not chronologically, but by region, it took me to Asia. I worked and lived in Singapore, Hong Kong, Japan, used to go to China and Vietnam a lot for work. Wow. I was living and working in Africa for a while, in South Africa, in Cape Town and Johannesburg. And we used to travel a lot to a lot of other African nations for the clients that we were working on. And then I spent time in Amsterdam and then went to California. And I was in California for 13 years before moving to Berlin, where I've been for the last 7. So that is how, that is the kind of trail of wandering. As far as getting to undividing, something that I always maintain and tell people, just from my travels around the planet, is that I've always believed that we have far more that connects us than divides us. And when I wrote a book, actually, that I published, self-published last year, called How to Burn a Rainbow. And it's actually a book about it's a memoir about my divorce from my ex-husband. It's the first book on gay divorce. And I took a tour around the States with that, because it's half set in America, half set in Berlin. And I got this real snapshot of the States as I was traveling around. And what became so clear, it was so obvious to me when I was going around, was just how utterly divided the country was on every possible line you can imagine, you know, from gender, sexuality, age, politics. And the position most people had was, I can't talk to those people. Those people are idiots. They don't know what they're doing. And there was this rampant dehumanization of anyone who doesn't think exactly the same way you do. And America, I think, for Western culture, is always the bellwether. You know, if it's happening in the States, you can set your watch on how long it takes before you start to see it in your country. And so when I got back to Berlin, I thought, all right, well, what am I working on next? You know, what am I going to write or do next? And then I hit on this idea of, like, I think I want to reconnect a divided world, and thought, okay, that's interesting. Oh, how would I do that? And I thought about writing a book, and then I heard about Substack, and I started this Substack. But the name Undividing actually comes from a German friend of mine. I would love to claim that it was my original idea. But I think what's interesting about it is that it probably took a non-native speaker. He speaks fluent English, but a non-native speaker to come up with a word like undividing. Because he said to me, as people often do when they're guessing in a second language, he said, so it sounds like what you basically want to do is you're undividing the world. And I was like, wait, that's a great word. He goes, isn't that a word in English? I'm like, no, but it should be. And then that's what it became. And what I realized is we use the word undivided when we talk about our undivided attention, but it's always used in the past tense, or it's used as a way to, it's sort of adjectival. And what I wanted to do was take the concept of bringing two things together and turning it into an action, into a verb, into a doing word, which is what undividing is. So I started the Substack, and much to my shock, surprise, and amazement, 6 months later, it has 17,000 plus subscribers. I write twice a week. And yeah, what it tells me is there's something very infectious about the idea, and the readership is from all over the world. It's read in 135 countries, read in every state in America. I mean, it's wild how it has just taken off. So yeah.
So you've captured people's imaginations, for sure. It would appear, and I think there's a hunger, right? There's a thirst for this, and I think people know exactly what you're talking about. I could relate completely. It's like, what's he talking about? Everyone's so happy and united, and you know, everyone is just ready to have a drink together and chat about things and raise our collective consciousness. It doesn't seem quite like that, does it? No. In many ways and many portrayals that we see of the world. So it's a kind of a movement, if you like, as much as an idea. Is that right? Is that what's happening now?
would love it to be. Yes, I think that's where it's going. To be honest, it took off so quickly. I was still I was still figuring out what it was when it got all this attention, which has been great because a lot of very smart people read it and write back. And like, there's a lot of really smart people, just average folks with very good ideas who write comments, who write to me directly, and they have such great perspectives on the things that I've written. So I think it is going to become a movement. That is what I would love it to be. Yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful. I've got more questions, but I know Gary does as well.
Yeah, go for it, Karl.
Sorry, no, Gary, you go ahead, because I just jumped straight in. I can't help myself.
This need that we all feel for security, I think it's security and safety. And we don't feel safe in a world that's divided. So where does the need to undivide spring from, do you think?
Well, I think what has happened, and you're exactly right, a lot of us are feeling unsafe and insecure in the lives that we're living every day. We're seeing cultural and societal shifts around us all the time. There are wars. You know, I live in Germany, and you know, one country over, just jump over the top of Poland, and there's a war going on between the Ukraine and Russia. I mean, we feel these conflicts around us all the time. We don't really know what to do about it. We are very conscious of the fact that our data is being harvested all the time, never for our benefit. That we are products and are being, you know, you can't, the contract with the internet used to just be you bought something, it's the product. Now it doesn't matter what you do on the internet, you're the product. And I think there's this sense that people have of, I don't feel like I've got the rights that I want. I see my world changing around me in ways that I don't understand and don't like and don't know how to stop that. I see myself disconnected from friends, from my family, from people at work. And I'm further and further and in a smaller and smaller bubble. And what I think Undividing is prompting in people is this response from a place of, I don't like this feeling. I don't like the fact that the only default I'm given is pick a side, pick a side, pick a side now. And anyone who doesn't agree with me, I have to cancel. Because we can all see, well, that's not working. It's not working for us anyway. It's working for some people very well. It's not working for us. And people are looking for some alternative and they don't know what it is. And that was very much the sense I got when I was in the States. A lot of people wanted to do something different, but they didn't know what. So hopefully Undividing is a space that I've created on Substack that is a place where people can come who want some space to think about this and to think it through and see it in their lives and see where the divisions are and get practical tools to undivide those things.
And as I've said to you before, none of us are smarter than all of us. So
True
if you have
that.
17,000 people, even if they do have differences, working together to go, oh, this is something we could do. It becomes a productive thing, not just a nice concept. And I know that's something that you would like to discuss maybe towards the end of our session. I always ask our guests to send us some questions, and I'm going to read this one out verbatim.
All right.
And then qualify it.
Okay.
And your question to yourself was, what do you mean when you talk about undividing ourselves? And before you answer, that can have two meanings. It can have a meaning ourselves from within our community, our family. So ourselves is interacting with others. But there's also an intimation that we're divided inside ourselves in that question. So, what's yours?
Well, undividing for me, there's two sides to it. There is undividing ourselves, undividing all the divisions that we feel inside ourselves, and then undividing the conflicts and the divisions that we see around us. But my firm belief is that all divisions that we see out there in the world, they all start in here. And something that was revealed to me during my divorce. Because what I had decided to do and what the body of the book is about, I mean, for anyone hoping for a TMZ style tell-all scandal book about divorce, it's not that. What I discovered when I decided at the beginning of the book that I wanted to use my divorce as my crisis of identity. And something was given to me during that time, or I was reminded of something during that time called the emotions diary, which is a way of understanding how you're wired inside. Because I made a decision that I was going to go through this divorce. I would not get to the other side of it and be the same person I was at the beginning. That I was going to do whatever I had to do the work, dig down. I didn't care how much it hurt. I had to get to the bottom of basically why had I dated the same guy 6 times in a row and married the last one. You know, I was seeking these guys out and I didn't know why. So it started from that point to understand my dating self. But of course, that is attached to every other part of my emotional world. And what the emotions diary allowed me to do was discover why I did the things that I do, why I repeated the patterns that I repeated, what a feeling was that I couldn't understand. Like, what's this feeling I've got? Why am I afraid of this? There was literally no question I couldn't ask the emotions diary and it wouldn't give me an answer. And well, what I mean is it would always give me an answer. And it was some tough love sometimes. But it was a way that I got to understand myself. So what it then stopped me doing was reacting from a place of upset, hurt, dismay, confusion, rage, whatever. And then to compensate for that, doing things out in the world that then affect other people and splash up on other people, all that stopped. So I think undividing yourself is a hugely important part of, I mean, I don't think people who go out and start wars are very happy people inside, people who perpetuate wars and conflict. They're not happy folks. And I think there's a lot of us, we spend a lot of our lives running from our emotions, compensating for them, not sitting with them, not getting to know them. We actively,
start a war. Yes, that would be one way. That would be one way of ignoring. Yes.
I will put all those those feelings I cannot understand. I'll put them into this. What I'm going to call a just cause.
Yeah.
And that feels good because now they have somewhere to go, but it doesn't solve why they're there in the first place.
No. Yeah. And we can see that in so many different aspects of labeling others who are not like us. Yes. From the neurodivergent world, which I've been propelled into in the last 5 years or so. What we're seeing happening with immigrants into almost every nation on the planet. I've said this, I mentioned this in previous podcasts. I have documentary personal evidence that almost every human on the planet, bar psychopaths, share the same 9 or 10 non-negotiable core values. And they're the obvious things like honesty, trust, love. And if you were to sit one group on one side of a bipartisan division and you push them to come up with their non-negotiables, and then you did the same with the other group, they would effectively be identical. And they were born not separate. They were born undivided. So how do we program ourselves, despite our claimed core values, to be so despicable to each other? I find it hard.
Yeah. My theory on that is that most people define themselves by who they aren't. There's us and there's them. And people are much quicker, like they find it much quicker and easier to say them lot, those people over there, and talk about everything that's wrong with those people over there. And so, you grow up in a house where you'll get told who your them is, or several thems, and those are reinforced in us from a very early age. And I think we just grow up being told them. And also the other part of the them bit is that they are not as good as us, or they think they are better than us, and they do therefore not deserve as much as we deserve. So they're not as human as we are. And this is where, this is where it begins, that we start looking at other people around the world and have decided, well, they deserve less than we do.
And that does map and reflect the inner territory as well, doesn't it? Or the inner terrain, because we do that to our own sort of inner personalities. I mean, Gary's got an amazing way of owning that, which has been, incredibly functional, and your own personal salvation, right, Gary? To to brand and name your. I mean, people call it parts work, don't they? Your individual makeup. You've dealt with in a brilliant way to make sense of life and triumphed as a result. And but that map is there, isn't it? And it is so much easier in a way to see it out there as a way of not seeing it in here. And when we were describing it earlier on, it's like, the world is in an inflamed state, perhaps. And as horrible as that is, that's still probably easier and more attractive than looking inside, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. It's scary. I mean, look, the thing that I did during my divorce with the emotions diary and where I got to with it was not pretty. I mean, it was really difficult stuff to do. And it is not, and to be honest, a lot of why I was able to do it is I decided when I first got to Berlin, I wasn't going to work for a year. I just had to pull the plug on my entire life and sit still. And it gave me a lot of space to think. And what I discovered is that, but what I discovered, even though I said that it's not necessarily the most fun thing to do, is incredibly addictive. Because once you gain that very first piece of understanding, and I hesitate to use the word self-mastery, but the sense of, compassion and understanding of yourself, where you go, I'm feeling this, and now I'm going to feel this. And then I have, there's primary emotions, there's what you feel, and then secondary are what you feel about what you feel, which can be cultural, learned, however. So, an example I use in the book is I'll get an email from my ex-husband's lawyer, which will make me feel anger. But then I might feel depression because it's gone on so long, or I'll feel jealousy because why should I be angry when he's having this, what I perceive to be this great time during our divorce that I'm not having? Or it might be shame because how did I get myself into this situation in the first place? And it's from these secondary emotions, which echo a lot longer than the primaries, that you start to find yourself in expensive clothing stores, maxing out a credit card because you need a hit, or you're like drunk at 3 a.m. and they're throwing you out of a bar because you had to go and compensate for the secondary. So the more work you start to do, the more you recognize what the first thing is and what the second is. And then you go, I see. And normally I would go off and do it, but I'm not going to do all those things because I understand what this is. And I'm just going to sit with this a bit longer. And I found that all these emotions I'd run from had personalities, I started giving them names. I got to know them so well, I started using this metaphor of when they would visit. I'm like, all right, come on in. I'll make you some coffee. Let's chat. And to get in a conversation with your inner world, it's not so much that it changes you, but it's like popping the hood on the car and you go like, oh, I see. I see how it all works. Because, I mean, if running from your emotions was an Olympic sport, I would have won gold. I mean, hands down. Every nation I lived in would have been, here's a passport. Please represent our country. But yeah,
and you're not the only one, are you? There's a global Olympics, a constant global Olympics going on, isn't there, of that?
100%. 100%. So that's the importance of doing that work, because you arrive at a place where I finally got to this point where I realized, I'm enough. And I actually like myself for the first time in my entire life. It took me into my 50s, where it's like I genuinely like myself. I see all the faults and the ridiculousness, and I still get frustrated with myself sometimes because seeing the things that I do. But overall, I like me.
Fabulous.
And it took a long time. Yeah.
That sounds like self-mastery to me, Karl. It really does. And I understand your caveat with that, but I think that's a heroic effort, frankly. And I'd love to, ask you about, what made you hold your feet to the fire? Because you didn't have to do that, but maybe there are other things to ask before that, Gary. Because I know you've got some other.
I think that's really pertinent, because there's usually two reasons why people do that depth of work. One is you're going to slit your wrists if you don't. Hold my hand up to that. Or you become so frustrated with life, you go, there must be something else. So
I think it was a combination of both. I mean, for me, it was definitely survival. I did not have it in me to go through what I could see myself about to go through again with my divorce. I didn't have it in me to do it again. And I thought, I think I would rather kill myself than repeat this again. I just gotten to this point of like, am I this hopeless? Am I really never going to learn? Is this my life? Is this all I could see in front of me was more failed relationships, more financial ruin. And it just got to the point where I was like, I can't do it. So there was partly survival aspect to it. And the other part was also, there has to be something else. There has to be all these other people that I see talking about spirituality and whatever. They can't all be making it up. Like some of them must have figured something out. I'm going to try and figure something out for myself. So, and I'm not sure why I chose to do it solo. But I will say this, when you choose to go on an odyssey like that, the right people, guides will pop up, and the right people popped up at the right time with the right information or the right sign. I mean, over 100 of them. I chronicle all of their wisdom in my book, and I don't know. I guess so. Now, so I started by saying I did that solo. Actually, I didn't. It was a kind of group effort from random folks on the way.
Yeah.
So in a way, it's a same-sex divorce report or the story of a same-sex divorce, but actually, it's a hugely, on another level, it's a human story of transformation from. It sounds like everything's transferable within there for anyone who's hit a wall of that kind in life. And it's very interesting to me, you described a very enviable life as well, didn't you? It's like, you sounded like the sort of person who shouldn't be having those, I'm using the bunny ears on the shouldn't, but you told us about all the places you lived in and the exciting work you did. We're not thinking, are we, that person has got these difficulties to transcend and transmute and be an alchemist about it ultimately.
Well, the problem is everywhere you go, there you are. So every country I went to where I thought, here I'll be fine, and you turn up with all your usual stuff, like here it comes, and it all looked great on paper. And actually, there's a point I write about in the book where the reason why it's called How to Burn a Rainbow is that it was about chasing rainbows. It was about chasing these ideas that were told. If you just follow this script, you'll be happy. Like, just do this and everything will be fine. You'll feel great. You will have your happiness. And I diligently followed all the ones from the straight world, all the ones from the gay world. And I woke up one day in this house lying next to this man with the dogs. Owned this beautiful house, had this incredible international job, huge group of friends. And I'm like, I'm miserable. And I don't know why I'm miserable, because I did everything I was told I was supposed to do. And it really unhinged me, because I thought maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe I don't know how to feel joy and happiness and gratitude. Like maybe there's something in me that's really fundamentally broken. But what I discovered was you can't just follow the script. That you have to ditch it, burn it, and write your own. Figure that out.
Can I pick up on that? On the sort of narrative deficit or narrative failure. You did what you were meant to do, and there's a lot of this going on. This is what the millennials are finding with their lives, aren't they? You told all we had to do was work hard and follow the script, and everything would be fine. They're finding it in their own lives that that's not the case, and the people who told them that are sort of whistling and looking the other direction, perhaps. Sorry, I went into some serious boomer othering there, but I'm making a point. It's not an attack on any particular group. It's more a point about narrative failure and bringing us back to Undividing, because this is the great gift, isn't it, from the adventure, as it were, of and the place you've been to and where you've come back from. I take it, you feel like you have come back from that, from much of the darkness of that, and you're in a new place, a new man, essentially, or effectively. So how would you call that the undividing? Were you undividing? Were you putting yourself back together again? And is this the method, if you like? Is it a method as much as it's a movement?
It's definitely a method. I mean, for me, yes, it was definitely an undividing of myself. There was it was a bringing together of all the parts of me, and not pretending that this is a good bit, this is a bad bit, or this is a part I like to talk about, here's the part I'll never talk about. It's all just one thing now. And what it took for me to do that was to undivide myself by getting to know myself, getting to love all the bits of me, not just 60%, and then the other 40 I won't even talk about. And it's constant. I mean, it's ongoing. It's not a destination. I mean, I hope for my entire life to be a work in progress, because I find that far more interesting than, again, we're always told, like, happily ever after, like walk off into the sunset. Life shouldn't be about arriving at a destination, the end. Now spark up the barbecue, and that's what we're doing for the next 40 years. So there was definitely a process of doing that. But whenever something else that I have always done, and it was commented on by a friend who's known me a long time, earlier this year, when I was on my way back from my tour, he said to me, the thing that I've always liked about you and what I've always admired is that you have this incredible ability to make friends. He said, he said, I could drop you in the middle of a jungle, and then 2 weeks later, you'd walk out with a group of friends going, hey, I met all these cool people on the way. And he said, I always wondered how you did that. And when I started watching it, because he said, I was trying to learn how you did this. He said, you can sit across from someone who is so blindingly opposite to you and talk to them for a while, and then go find common ground.
Yeah.
And you find the humanity in them because of the common ground that you share. Now you have this in common. And the other bit doesn't matter so much. Like, something I say in my work a lot is, it's not what somebody believes, what they believe is not really important.
No.
That's not important at all. Why do they believe it?
Yeah.
That's the interesting stuff. And of course, social media and a lot of the conversations we have these days are just the what. Here's what I believe. And if you do not believe this, then you are wrong, and you are evil, and you are bad, and you are a threat. But when you get to the why, there's always a very human story, and you can see yourself in it.
Yes.
And you can go, I don't agree. I don't agree with what you think, but I totally get why you think it. I totally get it. And something I'll often say is to other people is like, if you had grown up the way that person had grown up, with all the influences that they had there in their lives, you would probably think exactly the same thing they would.
That's the essence of compassion, isn't it? That's compassion and love right there, to me, anyway.
Yeah. So I've always done that, and I realized that this is something I kind of need to figure out how to teach people to do. Yeah. And that really was the kind of, I didn't even know when I started Undividing that that's where I was trying to get to, but I realized I was coming back to the same things every time at the end of every article, whether it was about we should stop using generational names because that's a division, or let's have a look at how we're policing comedy because that's a division, or let's have a look at, say, something like the bombing of Dresden, where you had two sides who were utterly convinced of their rightness, but now let's have a look at what that has led to 80 years on. And every single time it comes back to talk to each other. And not even talk, listen. Just shut up and listen to this person. Because I honestly believe most people don't want to be right. They want to be heard. They want that more than they want to be right. They just want someone to listen, hear them out, and go, I get it.
Yeah, we've talked about different kinds of listening before, and just waiting for your opportunity to say your bit is not listening.
No. Or listening for the bits that reinforce what you already thought before you went in.
What you were saying to me made me think of a lecture series I watched. I think it was on masterclass.com. I forget the guy's name. I'm hopeless with names after a while. But he was an ex hostage negotiator, terrorists, bank robbers.
Wow.
His favorite thing was when he lifted the phone, he'd go, "Now, you're not going to like what I'm going to tell you." And I took my own kind of reclamation back in the day. I didn't realize until later, rather like a hostage negotiation. And when I then had to learn how to do handle conflictual conversations at work and train doctors how to handle them. And it's a similar thing. We may not see eye to eye at the beginning, but how do we make the one step? One thing we can establish about each other that isn't about telling you what you are. Because it's usually somebody, as you said earlier, telling somebody, you're not the same as me. Well, actually, we're both human. We're both drawing breath. We're both having a coffee. We might both have kids. Okay, we're more similar than we are different. What's the next small step we can take? I would like to move on now, if we may, and go to how are you going to do this undividing?
Yes, absolutely.
There's the big picture, the grand plan. But
yes.
What are the small things people can do just to kind of taste it and test it out?
Two things that I come back to all the time are curiosity over certainty. We think we know someone, we think we know what they think and why they think, and we're almost always wrong. So my thing is, if you just approach people with curiosity and not certainty, you will discover you most times are not right, and you'll find that there's something else behind there. You may have completely got wrong what you thought they thought. You may completely have gotten wrong why they think that. And if you approach people with curiosity and not certainty, I promise you will discover things that you did not know. And the other thing I tell people to do, and I think this is a really simple one, and it's actually very good to use when you are in a situation of you have to deal with somebody who you violently disagree with, or someone who you think of as just a complete problem. It might be in the workplace. It might be over an issue. I mean, I come from a community that we're constantly under attack, So, but I've had some of my most fascinating conversations with people who might be quite violently against our rights. I've actually learned a lot about us from talking with them. So what I tell people is to do a thing, I call it an undividing, where the rules of engagement are, you talk for 5 minutes, I listen. I talk for 5 minutes, you listen. We discuss it for 5 minutes, and then at the end, we say one thing to each other that we learned that we didn't know before. The first five, you let them talk first, I guarantee you they'll hear you out. But you have to shut up and just listen to them. Just listen to what they said, and listen and really listen deeply. Don't interrupt. Let them run. And if they've still got more time, ask them hey, when you said this, did you mean clarify something that they said? If they think they've run out of time. And when it's your turn, you say your thing. And don't go back in to counter theirs. You just say your perspective on it. The thing that you want them to really understand about you, that is what you're trying to get across to them. And I guarantee the 5 minutes discussion, it usually goes a lot longer. Because now people are genuinely interested and listening to one another. And when it gets to the one thing at the end, it's usually something quite transformative. Yeah. So I tell people, do an undividing. You've got that person in the office that you can't stand and you can't work with. Okay, let's do an undividing. Oh, the other rule is no one gets canceled. Can't cancel someone in an undividing. So you have to go, I trust you enough that I am going to listen to whatever it is that you have to say. You can say it badly, unpleasantly, politically incorrectly. However you can get it out, so that we can just have it out. And I will do the same. And I will trust you and you trust me. And it's very interesting how that also will open people up if they know that, okay, that's how we're going to do it. People are often relieved.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. I think you might be proud of me this week, Karl.
Hey.
I did some undividing, uncancelling work because I have a live stream at most days, and I have a sort of YouTube social media profile. I get comments and correspondence, and it can go very wonky in these, as I'm sure you know, and everyone knows who watches and takes part in social media. And in this week, I decided to reach out to two people who I decided to block and cancel because I had this really uncomfortable feeling that although in many ways it was a good boundary to set, it wasn't as deep, or I hadn't got as much. I hadn't brought in as much to it as I'd hoped to the situation, and I wanted to get back to them and have my say. And I thought the best way to do that is not to keep thrashing it out on social media, but to have a phone call. So I had a phone call with one of these people, and it was in about an hour. I thought it was only going to be 10 minutes to just say, let's just agree to disagree. It's good to hear your voice. You're obviously a human being and not just, someone sniping from the comments, and that could be vice versa. And I have a much more powerful position because they're just talking to me through the comments. And that's often compensated for by quite sort of brash things. Whilst I'm controlling the environment, I can block them if I want to. We had the most incredible conversation, and I can't speak for the other person, but I found a whole lot more humanity than I had previously experienced in the conversation. It was wonderful. It wasn't like The Sound of Music and Happy Ever After, but it was such a massive and real improvement on what had gone before. I was so pleased for that. So pleased for that.
You can never learn less from a conversation.
Yeah. And this is the thing. It's like we've lost the art of talking to each other. We've started treating conversations like combat. We treat them as things that have to be survived with our opinion intact. And somehow we have to make this person agree with us or we've got to damn them. And that's kind of what conversation has become these days. Whereas it used to be a place where two people would come to find a third thing. They've got one opinion, I've got another opinion. Let's find a third thing together. It was a way to explore with people. That's what conversations were. Now they've been reduced to these, like you say, a lot of conversations are comments.
Yeah.
Which that's not a conversation.
No, it's a battle. It's a battle, isn't it?
And I'm often discovering people they've lost the ability to talk to people who don't 100% agree with them. They don't actually know how to negotiate a conversation.
And they haven't had to. The culture you mentioned before has had people live entirely in a way that they don't even have to do that. So it's like, an atrophied skill, isn't it? If you don't need it, you probably forget how to do it. And we've created a culture. Certain parts of the world have a culture which is entire cities are made up of certain kinds of people, aren't they? Or parts of that city.
Yeah.
And although that is a really rational way to problem solve, we're seeing the problem with that, I think, as we speak, aren't we? It's all part of the challenge that we're facing. That if we silo ourselves so dramatically and drastically, we are going to lose the richness, and we're going to lose true diversity, aren't we?
We are.
I mean, diversity isn't a city with that type of person living there. We've got 27 types of people here, and they all live in different places. That's not real diversity, is it? I don't think. Sorry, Gary.
There's two types of diversity as well. There's the moral, ethical kind of diversity and inclusion. You shouldn't exclude de facto gay people, black people, trans people. They're just people. But there's also diversity of emotion. There's diversity of experience. There's diversity of intellectual capacity. So you could have a room full of pale, stale, male-looking guys who are incredibly different in the way they think, feel, and operate.
Yes.
you can have a room full of people who look very different, but actually all think the same way.
Yes.
So there's a blend of two things you would have to make sure happens.
I think that actually was one of the great failures of DEI, is that it was far easier for companies to hire people who all thought the same. But because the crisis of the time was diversity, we just went for people who looked different, but it's basically the same opinion in different wrapping paper. And that was the problem with, like, I would go into companies, I'm like, well, this looks amazing. And then when you walk around and talk to people, you're like, they literally all think the same, like, or they're all saying the same things. You're like, this is like super weird. And that is a great failing of companies where, I have there's a talk that I give called The World of Unlikely Allies. And it talks about how the people we have the most to learn from are the people least like us. They see us with very fresh eyes. Like, I can tell you a story, if you like, about a quick story about when I was getting divorced. I was kind of turned into a pariah in the LGBTQ plus world, because we'd just been given the right to marry, and it was made very clear to me by several unmarried, never married gay men in bars that I used to go to that I had wrecked it for the team. So I thought, oh, is everyone saying this about me? I just stopped going out. There's no support at work when you're going through a divorce, which is wild, because we have leave for everything. We have nothing for divorce or the breakup of long-term relationships, which, as we all know, because we've all been through them, splash up on every part of your life. So I found myself with no support from work, no support from my community. And then I find myself thrust into a group of divorcing or divorced guys, straight guys divorce club, that used to meet at this concrete bench in an office, like a kind of office park situation where my building was. So all the guys from all the different buildings who were all getting divorced would come to this bench, and it was like a support, this kind of informal support network. But within that, there were 4 different religions, wildly different political views. There were people born in America, immigrants like me, C-suite to the mailroom. Divorce is the great equalizer. And our common mission was we had to survive our divorces. And so that trumped all the other divisions. We were united on this. And so you get to know people in the group, people you would never normally cross paths with. There was a guy in my group called, I know his real name, and I can't remember the name I used for him in my talk. I'm going to say Philip. His pseudonym I'll say is Philip. And so Philip, I knew, African-American guy from LA, which is important for the story, because we're chatting one day, it's just him and me at the bench, we're swapping some divorce stuff. And then he says, hey man, can I like ask you some gay stuff? And I'm like, sure, man, because we got like a fight club thing, at the divorce bench. So I'm like, yeah, of course, man. Like, what do you want to know? And I realized, I'm probably the first gay guy he's ever spent time with, So I'm like, all right, cool. Like, what do you need to know? And he said, what I want to know is, how do you decide who's the man and who's the woman? And it is literally the most offensive thing you can ask gays or lesbians. And I'm thinking, bro, I'm thinking to myself, dude, are you for real? Like, we've come so far, like, that's what you've got? And I'm angry about it. And there's a lot of ways that could have gone. Like, if we didn't work in the same company, but imagine if he'd asked me that at work, and even if I didn't report him to HR, somebody else might have overheard it and got offended and reported him. Everybody, the expected thing to do was, well, we better cancel Philip now. And now Philip's got to go to HR, do sensitivity training, apologize to me. Everyone checks, oh my God, are you okay, Karl? Da, 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 da. And he's a villain, right? Could have gone like that. Instead, because we've got this thing, I say, well, all right, yeah, sure. So I'm trying to give him this kind of PG version of, let me see if I can answer that for you. There's tops, there's bottoms, there's versatiles, like, blah, blah. I'm trying to explain it from myself. I was like, does that answer your question? And he's like, not really. He's like, what I want to know is, like, emotionally, like, how do you decide emotionally who's the man and who's the woman? And I'm like, what? I don't understand. He goes, all right. He said, look, I got a girl, right? I got my girlfriend, and she's great. and I really dig her, but she's always telling me where she's at. I know where my girl is at because she never stops telling me about what I did, how it made her feel, what her friends thought about it. She's always telling me all day long how she feels, right? I know where my girl is at. She wants me to do the same thing for her. I can't do it. I'm not raised like that. We don't talk about that stuff. It's not fair on her. And I want to, but I don't know how to do it. So I guess what I'm asking is, when it's two dudes, how does anyone know where they're at?
Very good.
And in that one question, that guy explained every single relationship I've ever been in.
Wow.
And that is not a question any gay guy, any ally would ever have thought up. That is something a straight guy with no experience with gay men who's watching from afar, looking at us, that's the kind of thing he would wonder. That's the kind of thing he might ask his straight friends, right?
And with absolutely no ill intent, but with a bond with you that made it okay to ask the question.
Yes. And then what it took me a while to realize later was what he was actually asking was he was asking for my help. He was asking me, could you teach me something that will help me show my girlfriend I love her?
Yeah.
Because he thought maybe gay guys had cracked something that straight guys hadn't. He was looking at us and thinking, maybe they've got some knowledge I could benefit from. But it came out as, how do you decide who's the man and who's the woman?
Yeah.
That is why you have to hang in on conversations, because
it's a bit like our conversation with Michelle Minikin weeks ago. Good girl deprogramming. She believes girls are programmed to behave in certain ways. Straight males are programmed to behave in certain ways with women and with other men. And his bravery in that question, I mean, he must have thought, God knows where this is going.
And the vulnerability he's allowing, you know, that he's like, and what I tell people, like, what was so important about that is that the next time Philip's in a room with other guys like him and people start talking about LGBTQ plus people, Philip might say, well, when I was getting divorced, there was this gay guy getting a divorce and he was kind of all right. And he actually told me some stuff, and then he might talk. My point is, it's like Philip will speak for me in rooms I will never be in.
Yes.
Against his people's common knowledge. And that does more than anything any of us will ever post on social media. And that is the magic of Undividing, having someone see your humanity enough that they speak for you.
And the converse is true, isn't it? The converse is true. If that had been a bloody exchange whereby he'd been cancelled, I imagine any ill feeling he had would have been compounded. I mean, that's not to say, you know, we shouldn't challenge anybody, but there's some beautiful nuance in that, isn't there? If you're prepared to take it beyond the polarities and have the conversation and create the bonds of trust and you know, like decent spaces in which people can truly communicate with each other. Which you're obviously doing in so many ways, Karl.
Well, this is what I tell people is like, people will turn up and they won't have the right words. They won't have the right questions. They won't know what the language they're supposed to do, but they want to be with you. They are curious about you. They want to know things. They will get it all wrong. Your job is to see, here's a human who wants to connect with me. Let me do what I can to bring them in. And that, instead of the default of, you know, because, you know, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, but when you're a nail, everything looks like a hammer. And I think everybody thinks they're the nail. And then everyone else is the hammer. And that, we certainly have that in common. I think we're all feeling like we are the victims these days. So, but if we can turn that off and turn on our curiosity when someone approaches us, this is how we, you know, I don't know any story anyone has told me where this has gone horribly wrong.
No,
it's you know, I think we're also, because of this quick hit society and instant gratification, we feel like if we haven't converted someone to our cause in one conversation, they're an idiot, or it was a failure, or this doesn't work. This is a coming together that happens very slowly over time. People don't change their minds because they lost an argument. They change their minds because I like that guy.
That's right.
I don't agree with him, but I'm going to hang with him again.
Yeah.
And that's how people change their minds.
I've always thought this, you know, shaming people doesn't get them to change their behavior, does it? It really doesn't. We know that ourselves as, I mean, and there's a an amazing irony here, isn't there? Because we are, I suppose, respectively, differently, variously subject to the negative side of what we're talking about, which then informs, we could call that a traumatic event. And then we're not as able anymore, are we, in interactions with people to be fully functional about that particular thing or what gets triggered by being in similar situations. So we're all doing that, aren't we? And that perhaps is another part of your, I think we need another hour basically with Karl. But
anytime.
Maybe a part 2 would be great. The kind of the practicalities and more of the tactics of undividing. But it does point to a common, for me, going back to where we started about, how the world's a bit of a mess. Let's just say that, chaotic times, and whichever kind of way people serve that, in the spiritual healing world, it's like, well, we're in for a great human evolution of possible healing and transformation. The conspiracy theorists saying, they're seeing the same thing, and it's like, well, it's being done to us on purpose to achieve these aims. And the older generation saying to the younger generation this sort of things, and everyone's seeing it in the same sort of thing from their own view, and might confirm their bias, if you like. And then there's the overwhelming universal and transformational possibility, which seems to unite all of those groups, despite or in spite of how they look at things, is that there's coming back, that first, one of those first principles we talked about, if we can rest the urge to look outside and blame and other and turn it round and see inside ourselves, all of those groups, all of those different ways of seeing this are united, I think, in what you've done, Karl, which is to face it personally, and then their whole world changes, right, as a result. And as a result, all of our world changes, if you like, which would be the positive echo to wrap it up nicely, Gary, would be the positive echo Karl has given us.
Well, I've got the undividing positive echo. As you know, I mentioned, we have this tiny tidbit at the end of a positive echo, and this is an undividing one. So I go to the gym twice a week and work out like mad. I was looking up last week towards the far end of the gym, and there was a guy in a wheelchair. Doesn't happen many times in a really high-end kind of sports club. And with him was our man mountain trainer. And up to this day, I don't know what his name is. I'm going to seek his name out. But I watched this huge guy who normally trains other huge guys with this man in a wheelchair who clearly had fairly recently had a stroke. And the only part of his body that he had real control over was his right arm. Here's this man mountain spending best part of 30 minutes just gently lifting and guiding his man's left arm, patiently talking quietly into his ear. Then he moved him to a piece of apparatus, lifted him in, and wow. So I went up when they were having a break, and I said to them, "This is the most awesome relationship I've seen in a very long time." And the smile on the guy in the wheelchair, he couldn't speak very well, but just the smile. I mean, I've got goosebumps now just remembering it. And I thought, in that moment, 3 people undivided. Very different ways.
Yeah.
2 working together, and the third one observing the work together.
Yeah.
And then making, hopefully, an undividing, reassuring affirmation. So that's my positive echo for this week.
Thank you, Gary, and thanks, Karl. This is where to pick up Karl's book, one of many places, I'm sure, but an easy way there with Amazon, How to Burn a Rainbow. And it would be great to get you back on it. And if not, if we can't, to have the resources of how people can find you, your work, your Substack, and how to perform an undividing as you described it earlier on the session, the method, which I'm sure is going to grow and grow and have different sorts of applications, presumably, Karl, as well. There's going to be a whole range of expressions of undividing, presumably.
Yes, I am. Now that I've been writing it for 6 months and things are starting to becoming clearer about what it is and how to teach people, now is the time to start and try things out, test things out, and see what sticks for folks and what works for them. So it's exciting.
Well, if we can help with that, Yeah, with our respective communities.
We need to
come
build a
back.
megaphone for Karl.
Say that again, Gary.
We need to build a megaphone for Karl.
Yeah, well, whatever we can do here to help, whatever I can do in Portugal, I'm sure Gary in the UK, Karl, are here at your service with this beautiful idea. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
All the best. Take care, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Guys.
Bye for now. Ciao.